Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How are you guys doing today?
Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday. As always, thank you for spending the next hour with us, no matter how you're tuning in. And we usually say this at the end, but I'm going to say it in the beginning. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you find our shows useful, interesting, entertaining, shareable, all of the above.
All of the above, definitely. You definitely need to do that. This show is going to be very interesting. It is kind of like us going back to what we've been talking about as far as trying to get our ducks in a row, but in the same instance, we're in back into that real genealogy mode for certain and for sure. So, Brian, you ready?
I am ready. So we have a great show lined up for you today. So pleased to welcome Kelly and Bryan. Kelly and Bryan are the founders of Kinship Tales, an innovative audio storytelling company built on their shared mission: build legacy with authentic storytelling. With a combined background in teaching and a deep-seated passion for storytelling, Kelly and Bryan have dedicated their careers to capturing memories, preserving legacies, and strengthening family bonds. Both are former educators who bring years of experience in guiding and supporting people of all ages in sharing their unique stories and experiences. Through Kinship Tales, they offer in-depth interviews, audio guest books, and family history preservation services, along with a growing podcast that explores the power of human connection and memory. Kelly and Bryan believe no one's legacies should be forgotten, and they are on a mission to ensure that meaningful stories are passed down through generations. Welcome to the show, Kelly and Bryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
It's a real pleasure to have you. So it's whoever wants to answer this one first, please feel free. Um, Before launching this service, had you been interested in family history? Had you been doing any genealogy research?
Yeah, before the business, I definitely had not done any genealogy work. I had a very strong sort of like awareness of my family history on my dad's side, but my mom's side was kind of a mystery. And so that's one thing I'm excited about now. And as we've now been, we're kind of beginner genealogists personally. That's what I'm really excited about, is to learn more about my mom's side.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Actually, same for me as well. Some of my family members have done a fair amount of genealogy research, and they've shared it over the years with me. But that full history, especially of my European ancestry and stuff, I don't know much about. So that's kind of what I'm really excited to dive into.
Okay. So for both of you, again, I'm just really interested in terms of, was that the knowledge that you have, was that passed down orally? Did that come with documents, with pictures? Kind of, what was the ephemera that you inherited?
Yeah, ours is mostly oral. On my dad's side, we had pretty recent. It was my great grandparents immigrated from Ireland and then moved to Butte, Montana, and so that's kind of a big oral history there. There's a lot of a really big Irish population in Butte, and so that just kind of Irish heritage is probably the strongest thing on my dad's side. But yeah, on my mom's side, no history. We're not sure where her ancestors are from, how long they've been in America. Yeah, we really don't have any info there.
Yeah. So you have quite the journey ahead of you, and it's, I mean, I'm kind of feeling excited for you, because as Donya will equally say, once you start finding the records and then asking questions, there's just so many great stories and so many unexpected things that you get to look forward to finding out.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I would say for my family, it was oral history, but lots of photographs and documentation. My grandfather fought in World War II and was a fighter pilot, so I grew up in a family where those medals and photos and memorabilia were kept in the house. But I also was told that it was a memory that my grandfather didn't want to talk about and didn't want to have a sort of deep connection with, because of some of the additional trauma that came with that experience. And so I think there was a sense within me of like wanting to be respectful of that, but also understanding that I had a curiosity at the same time.
And where did the idea or the concept for Kinship Tales come from?
Yeah, so I think in terms of understanding us, we met in college, and you might notice Kelly has the same first name as my last name,
Yes.
which was kind of part of how we met each other. I introduced myself in our very first interaction once I learned her name, and I said, if we ever got married, you'd be Kelly Kelly. And it was just happenstance. I saw her and her friend walking, and so it led to a weird exchange with her friend who was giving me a weird look after I said that. But Kelly seemed
I was into it.
intrigued by that. And so a couple weeks later, we sort of bumped into each other again. And
the rest is history.
Yeah, ever since then, we really aligned, and we've been together for 13 years.
We are married, and my name is not Kelly Kelly.
Yeah, she did not. She did not change her name, and so yeah, I think for us, we have always aligned in our values and our views of who we are, and we got to know each other's families, and really wanted to work on forming community, and we at that stage didn't really know how we wanted to build a community and create those set of bonds with people in the world around us. But one of the things that really connected with us was environmentalism and understanding that climate change was going to be a huge impact on our generation and future generations. And so as teachers, we taught high school. Kelly taught science. I taught social science. We saw across our students that there was a disconnect between the stories within a family, and that younger generations weren't really necessarily having those stories passed down, and that knowledge wasn't necessarily being shared. And so those younger kids weren't, I think, going into their future feeling optimistic about certain things, weren't feeling connected to their past, and were lacking a sense of identity. And so I think intuitively we both were wanting to connect our future goals of building a community with storytelling, because that came naturally to us.
And as teachers, we realized that to teach a good lesson, it's all about storytelling.
Yes.
And when you are trying to communicate like scientific information, if you just list off the facts, no one cares. You have to make it interesting and connected to your life. And we were just seeing, especially during the pandemic, all this terrifying stuff happening, and realizing that it's storytelling that can help bridge the bond, or bridge the gaps that we're developing. And so we thought, okay, if there's one thing we can do, storytelling is hopefully what can save the world. And so we started our business like we just want to be part of the movement to connect as humans with each other.
Yeah. See, now I wish I had been in your science class. I got the dry facts. So I've had a lifelong struggle with science because of it. But funnily enough, it wasn't until I started learning how to cook with my mom, just being in the kitchen, my mom, great grandma, grandmothers, and just learning how certain things went together and certain things didn't go together, and that's how I retained it. But I think you guys made a really good point, or at least I'm going to try to draw out a point. Storytelling is an amazing way to convey knowledge, but also, I guess, depending on the story, fun. It can be entertaining, but it's a great way that human beings retain. I mean, it's as old as human beings are as a species. That's how we retain our history, our identities, our people's identities. So I think it's great that you kind of really decided to center a service around that.
Yeah. And we felt like, one of the skill sets that we had as educators was connecting with a broad range of people. And so I think in order to have people feel comfortable is being able to relate to people on a human level, and just understand that some people are more open to sharing and others are maybe a little bit reserved and shy. But a big part of that is just kind of being able to connect and find out who they are,
and have the patience, giving people the
Yeah.
time to
yeah,
let their stories come out.
yeah. And so we can talk about why audio is our main focus as well. But yeah, I think stories really are how we as human beings understand ourselves and the world around us. And stories are really, I think, what has propelled human society into where we are right now, and
Yeah.
where we might go into the future. Yeah.
So there were a few things I wanted to kind of focus on in terms of the services that you provide. And one of the on the website, one thing that caught my attention immediately was, I call it the phone booth.
Yeah.
So it's the lovely looking tent, which I understand can be customized depending on, I guess, how people want to use it. But can you explain that to the audience about how the telephone recording, the telephone booth?
Yeah, so we have, it's like an old school rotary phone, but it's been retrofitted so that when you pick it up, it starts recording what you say. It plays a message, kind of like you're listening to a voicemail, and you leave basically a voicemail message. And so we offer that for events. So they're great for weddings, but also like family reunions, important birthdays, anniversaries, that kind of stuff. And we were like, all right, this is cool. We like the phone, but we wanted to bring it up a couple levels. And so we have a simple game that goes with it to give question prompts, because it can be kind of intimidating to try and record stories.
Yes.
So we have a little game that's sort of inspired by tarot. That's like the visual of our current game. But we also do like a Jenga game, and, we can set up other board games, depends on the energy. But then lastly, having a private space like a phone booth is really helpful for recording as well. So we made the whole thing. We cut our steel and sewed the fabric and built this I think it's an 8-foot tall tent frame that we can dismantle and reassemble. And ours currently, we call it the fairy tale booth.
Yeah.
Ours kind of like main. It's all pink and gold and glittery. But yeah, so it's just to try and make like a magical space where you go in and you have this experience where you get a question and then you're leaving this message, and really trying to kind of add that weight that you're documenting your voice. We document so much with the internet that I think we can do it kind of haphazardly. We were trying to create a lot of pomp and circumstance, so you really felt the importance of documenting this moment, of documenting this story that you were telling. So that was our inspiration for the phone booth.
Yeah.
But again, I can see the applications are, I guess, as limited as someone's imagination. Again, down here in Charleston, there's a Masonic Lodge. I don't even remember what year of anniversary that they're celebrating. It's well over 100 years. And I was thinking this would have been amazing for that. Because, you had like 70, 80, 90-year-old men. I believe there was even a gentleman there that was over 100. And they've been members of this organization for such a long time. And just to have something like that set up at a function like that, where people under their own steam, feeling, when they're comfortable to do it, could go in and leave a recording. And again, I don't know much about Masonic lodges, but I'm sure that, some of them probably second, third generation family members to attend, and the stories that they must have would be just amazing.
Yeah. And then we edit, when taking all those stories and editing them together and finding kind of like the narrative flow between different stories.
Yeah.
That's the thing that we really love to do, is taking them into our little editing booth and figure out how to get them all.
So what have been some of the most popular kind of themes or topics that people have recorded on the phone?
Yeah. To give one example, we have primarily done weddings. So it's usually, gatherings where they're sharing well wishes to the couple or memories. And those are really beautiful. And again, we kind of string them together, and they're thematically sort of organized into this narrative. So it makes it more compelling and interesting to listen to. But we have also brought this out into the community, and we attended an LGBTQ event in Seattle, where we're from, and we had young people. It was an event geared towards young children, and it's called Pride Hop. And so basically we set up the phone, not the whole phone booth, but we set up the phone, and we had a spinning wheel game that basically allowed the kids to have different random questions asked, and we had different questions for different age groups. but it's really powerful to hear young people talk about their views on just their identity and who they are and caring about other people. And that's really
respect
and what to do when people are feeling not included and not involved. And so, yeah, having that, I think, really send a message to the community that, oh, wait a minute, young people do have opinions and beliefs, and they have their own thoughts and ideas, and they want to share them. You can hear the enthusiasm from the kids that they just, really want to share their ideas and thoughts with the world. And then we had parents and grandparents also record and do it as like a family bond and share that as well.
Yeah, it's also really fun when kids are present because they're not used to normal phones anyway, and rotary phones especially are so novel that they're gonna like, I had kids like putting the microphone to their ear, and I'm like, no, it goes this way. So that's always fun too.
Yeah.
And again, listening to you talk about that, Bryan, I can see how your experience as a social science teacher would definitely be beneficial.
Yeah. And I mean, I already knew that going into it just because I had facilitated a podcasting club on campus, and I understood that young people are really wanting to be heard and really want to share, their thoughts. And of course, there's a range of ideas, and there's ways for the kids to get kind of caught up in different things that maybe aren't necessarily accurate or on track, but it's a great way to allow them to hear themselves and feel a sense of empowerment with being able to connect with an audience and just understand that, yeah, people do care and they do want to listen and there's value to be shared.
But it's what's great about that, he recorded, or he set up the podcasting club before we left teaching, and the podcasting club still has just released an episode. It's still going even after.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
that was really great. I got my copy and I was like, "It's Mike."
So, at what point did the two of you think, you know what, this genealogy thing, this family history thing that seems to have gripped this country, we may have something that can, be a tool or something to that would be popular within that community? When did you make that leap?
Yeah, I think probably 6 months ago, we were like, all right, we need to actually start learning about genealogy ourselves and know that there's this big community that is also passionate about the same thing we're passionate about. And we had been really focusing especially on the wedding industry, which is, I love stories. Those are my favorites. We like interview couples separately and edit their stories together and ask them questions. And that's my favorite. But we were like, while that's a lot of fun and it's beautiful and that's documenting history, what we really want to do is, again, help build community and help families feel connected. And so, I would say it was about 6 months ago when we went, all right, we need to start learning. We need to start working in this space.
Yeah. And I would say we have done a few family reunions where basically we brought families together and interviewed, all 3 or 4 generations of families. And we saw tangibly how there was a specific connection within a family that understood sort of how the family, sort of originally came to a piece of land or a place or some sort of connection to who they are, and how those stories passed down are incredibly meaningful, but also give them a sense of their own identity within the world, a confidence and assuredness that, oh, wait a minute, I have this whole family behind me and this whole history of who we are and where we came from. And so I think that was sort of the light bulb moment of like, okay, yeah, that's directly connected to genealogy. And so, I think understanding also that within those families, within different families, the older generation their stories aren't always going to be there. And these families seeing the value of recording these stories and then being able to have those family members who may be struggling with different illnesses or are just close to passing, being able to have those stories recorded gives them the peace of mind to go, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to worry about having these stories move on. This is something that we actually invested in and have forever. And so, yeah, bridging all those generations of stories and then having these elder, matriarchs and patriarchs of the family being able to share those stories as well. We were like, okay, this is directly linked with genealogy.
And then, yeah, I guess also just hearing even from our own parents, like, oh, how did grandma do such and such a thing? And they're like, I don't know. We never asked. We never had a conversation about that. And so
we hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I wish I had asked. I wish I had recorded that. I wish I had taken that time.
Yeah.
That has been sort of a through line since we ever started this.
Yeah. And so
I wanted to ask, because you guys said something to me when we first talked about how it really pulled you in as far as the genealogy and the kinship and all of that, and how it affected your values and where you were. Can you kind of go into that? Do you remember what I'm talking about? I can't remember exactly, but it was really about, how you and I were discussing certain things, and you're saying that it really went into, because it has something to do with COVID and how that part. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it was being isolated in COVID, during the lockdown. And I lived really far from my family, and we lived close to your family, but we were afraid to get together because your parents had compromised health of their lungs.
Yeah.
And it was just feeling so isolated and detached. And that was the instigator of like, okay, we're going to leave our jobs and start this business.
Yeah.
Because it just felt so vital that we document these stories. It feels like almost like other things just aren't quite as important as making sure that we are honoring our families, honoring our communities, and recognizing that everyone has something important to say. Yeah. And I think that was something that, really hit us profoundly during the pandemic.
Yeah. And somewhat connected to that was also as a social science teacher, but Kelly being directly connected to education and school, we were seeing kind of this rewriting of history happening where books were being banned across the country. And, politically, we were seeing kind of a change where people were starting to kind of block out certain parts of history and wanting to allow young people to have access to that information. And so, I think within that, a sense that, all right, if we are all at home and we're isolated and, as a country, loneliness is an epidemic, the only way to solve that is forming a community and sharing stories and building connections that go beyond politics, that go beyond, the polarization and social issues that really aren't relevant to our day-to-day lives, but affect every single person and really bring us all together. That is something that we all share in common. And so stories are the way to be able to change that cultural push to want to hide that information and prevent people from having access to it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of part of our thinking.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, the timing of it, I find very interesting. And I guess my perception of it is forget just this country. Really, the world we haven't really spoken about the trauma that we endured during COVID.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that out of that kind of really horrific period, you guys were motivated to do something really positive and very community minded. So I think that's something that should be recognized and commended.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean,
it was weird because again, we were teachers, and so we did online teaching. And while that was crazy. One of the cool parts about it was like we were able to have these one-on-one conversations with students in a way that you can't in a classroom. Like we were on Zoom, right? So I could put a kid in a breakout room and be like, you seem like you're struggling, like what's going on? And then, their family member just died of COVID. And so it was, this kind of, this intimate conversation, I think, that we experienced during that time that kind of contributed to that. And I appreciate you saying that. I think that we all just kind of went like, all right, we're free. Let's all go. Like, let's go back to normal. And especially in school, it's frustrating because of course we have lots of friends who are teachers, and there's a lot of students we keep in touch with. And so we're very emotionally involved in education still. And it makes me really frustrated to hear about like, oh, the kids are behind. They're this far behind in math, or far behind in English. It's like everyone is. The whole planet shut down. Like maybe we don't have to think about how they would have been compared to if this hadn't happened. Let's just kind of see that the world changed and live with that. So yeah, I appreciate you also seeing that we all dealt with something, and we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes, instead of pretending it
We
didn't
try
happen.
to do stuff like that. Yeah, we try to talk about things like that and try to put all of that in perspective, as in some way Brian and I are also historians. So we try to connect what's going on now to what happened before, because this is not COVID wasn't different from the flu epidemic and the Spanish flu and what happened then and how they had to handle things then. Of course, it wasn't like this, but they still had to figure out how to handle these things, and we make comparisons. So we definitely understand that.
Yeah.
And now we have technology to be able to leave, while it's still fresh in our memories, what we lived through. Because
Yes.
they didn't have that technology during the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing before I wanted to start talking about the podcast is, and I think this is ingenious, that you offer vinyl. People can actually record
Yes.
vinyl.
Yes.
And I know people are like, but no one has, probably people around my age are like, but we gave away a record player.
Yep.
Kids are buying vinyl. That's all I have to say. The kids are buying vinyl.
Yes.
They are.
In huge numbers.
Yes.
And in many ways, it's probably the only viable way for many musicians and artists to be able to make an income outside of touring and performing. And so vinyl is becoming really popular, and it's a way to show your affinity for a different artist. But I think also there's a connection, and Kelly and I talk about this a lot, but a connection to a physical object, right? You can open up the cover, you can read the lyrics, you can see the different imagery and everything. You can't really see that on Spotify or Apple. You get the little square artwork. It doesn't have the same sort of emotional context that you typically get with this tangible physical vinyl record.
Yeah. And there's something about, putting it on the record player and slowing down, sitting and slowing down. Like I listen to Spotify every day, but it's a different experience. And I think young people are starting to recognize that. I think older people have known that all along and hopefully are still celebrating it, that there's something really special about like, okay, I'm listening to this album and that's all that's happening right now. And kind of tuning out a little bit of all of the options. We have like every movie, every TV show, every album ever made at our fingertips at all times. That's pretty overwhelming. And so making the choice to just be in the physical world, I think is pretty powerful. Yeah.
It's not as overwhelming as me understanding everything you just said. It means that I am actually that old to actually get exactly what you're talking about and being able to slow it down. But I love vinyl because my mom can sing, I sing, but only in the house, so don't nobody ask me. But yeah, but I know all of the music. My children have been exposed to such genres of music that is crazy. So what size are these albums? Are they the 45s? Are they like what are we talking about? Do we have the little piece in the middle that you See, you
Yes.
making me be old, right?
No,
You know more than I do about all these details. Yes. So all of our records are hand cut in the United States.
yeah,
They're not made anywhere else. They're made here. It's cool. It's really cool. The company we work with is cool.
yeah.
But so what's cool also is they're lathed instead of pressed, because it's because you gotta like make a mold to press a record.
Yes.
That's if you're making hundreds. But when we're making these one-offs, they're hand cut. So it's a pretty rare practice that not a lot of people know how to do. But
we like to say what we do is not a commodity. We can't scale this.
Yeah, we can't
to
scale what we do.
millions and millions of people. It's a personalized, customized experience. And so the epitome of that is this one-off record. I mean, obviously we can do
like
multiple
5
copies if you want to share it with every family member. But yeah, this one custom experience, and being able to give a family that and be able to listen to it is just amazing.
And we can do 7-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch
yes
records. So we've got more options. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's helpful, depending on what you're doing. If it's like a love story, for example, if you want to do just like your engagement story, okay, we'll give you like a little 7-inch and it's adorable. Yeah. But if we want to do, how did you meet? How did you fall in love? How did you get engaged? What's your life like now? What do you imagine for the future? We can do a full 12-inch record for that.
And I think the origin for us to even put spoken word onto a record was thinking about the fact that we wanted some sort of physical thing, right? Everything is so digital, as Kelly was saying. But then beyond that, we wanted to profile the individuals. We wanted to, here, you have people that are sharing their stories, and I think one of the most fascinating parts of a vinyl record is the cover and like the artwork and the design. And you can get so like esoteric and weird if you want to, and you can be traditional and just do like a simple photograph. It can be the whole gamut of different things. And if you go to our website, you can see some of the vinyl that we've already created, and there's lots of different styles, and we can work with professional photographers and bring people into a studio and do this like whole cover shoot.
Yeah, we advertise that on the website. A really great photographer, Hannah, that we work with, who's like, just, if you go to her socials, she's like loud, big, just so much personality. And so she does these really bright, colorful, enthusiastic photo shoots. And so, we've had parties basically where we we got food and snacks, and we're just like photo shoot interviews. It's your like, Vogue cover shoot day.
So everybody can be a rock star, which I mean, everybody wants to be, right? Like who wouldn't want to be on their own cover of a record? I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're saying, actually, I'm kind of laughing. You're saying rock star. I'm thinking more like Shel Silverstein, who did the Hug of War.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That was part of my university experience, without wanting to date myself too much. But spoken word on vinyl is not a new thing.
No.
You're putting a new spin on it, which is great. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how someone would actually go about recording a story or whatever they want to record on vinyl?
Yeah. First of all, I love Shel Silverstein. When I was a kid, I had Shel Silverstein audiobooks, and I would just like listen to them and fall asleep. Oh, I love Shel Silverstein. But yeah, we can do interviews a lot of different ways.
Yes.
We've done probably like half of them digitally, because the people we're interviewing aren't in the same place.
Yeah.
We love to be able to go in person if we can. Mm-hmm. We have our mobile recording studio, so we can record at a person's house. We can meet at like rent a space, or just do it over online.
Yeah.
Our passion is editing the stories. Yeah. So the interview is just like a fun time.
Yeah. And in terms of like, doing a story, we can take everything from just even like a voice memo audio, right? So like, we like to encourage people to just start small. It can feel intimidating to just even get a recording done. So we can do a professional recording.
We mail you a microphone if
get really high quality audio and make it sound like, a professional NPR style story. But we can also just take audio clips that you already have and your own personal interviews. And then what we do is we package it. Music is a big part of it. Mm-hmm. We love to align the music choices and themes with who that person is. So what is the style of music you like? What was playing on the radio at that time period in your life? And have that kind of create the ambiance of the story itself. So then you kind of are immersed in this space. And then, once we do that, we create the story structure. Kelly and I really spend a lot of time making sure that it's right. Each beat within the story is accurately told, and is able to reflect that person in the most sincere and authentic way. And then once we have that done, then we'll finalize the recording and then send it off to be pressed. But then we also, like I said, work on creating the custom design cover and artwork and other things too. So we do all of that in-house ourselves.
Yeah.
How many minutes is is each size album? Like, how many minutes would I have to do because I'm asking because we do really great stuff for my mom. I'm gonna put it out there. We do great stuff for my mother. And my mom is 85. Her 80. She's like, the last thing we did, she was so enamored by it that she was like, you guys don't have to do anything for me until I'm 95. And we're like, yeah, okay. Anywho, but that kind of thing. But yeah.
I think the 7-inch is 5 minutes on each side. The 10-inch is 8 minutes on each side.
Yeah. And then the 12-inch is roughly about 20 minutes. We, as you get closer to the center of the vinyl record,
and it's like spinning really fast,
the sound can get a little bit warpy. And so we like to play it safe and, keep it within the 18, 19-minute range. So that's for each side. So
it's like 10, 15, and 30 minutes ish total.
So really not that much difference than a club single.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's amazing how much detail you can incorporate into that. You know what I mean? Because if you think about listening to a story on the radio, right? If you do listen to NPR or something like that, 10 minutes of time is a lot of detail, especially if you're focusing on a particular story. And with our editing, we can make sure that it's encompassing what those details are, and you really get the full picture of,
and like all the kind of
what happened,
restating things and having trouble articulating ideas and pauses. We can just pull those things right out and be efficient with the time.
You just beat me to it, because I was going to say, I imagine one of the challenges as an editor is keeping the cadence and the flow, make sure that things don't flag or that they don't go too quickly.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because there's also, when you get in the flow of like, I'm pulling out all the ums, you can sort of go overboard and then it feels really intense.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while you need, a breath to be heard, especially if that, we're going to talk about the podcast in a second, but there's one episode in particular that I was like, this breath has to stay because it communicates emotion. And so it's that kind of the creative decision making of what stays and what gets cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's also just something powerful about being in the space where somebody has lived. So like, for example, doing the family reunion, we did one back in August, and this family has owned a piece of property for 57 years. We did the recording in this, one-room cabin that the family has had at that property ever since the beginning. And so you can hear the room, you can hear the creak of the chair that has been there, since the early days. And so, having those particular voices in that particular space, we want to make sure that that's also included, because, if you focus too much on like the studio sound and it being exactly perfect, you're missing some of those other qualities within the sound that, again, evoke emotion
and
bring people it. And humanizes it and makes it feel more real.
So if I wanted to, so let's talk about the cover. Because if I want, do I send you like a picture? I'm dead serious, because like I said, we do great things for my mom. So if I wanted to like send you, because she loves to talk. So if I wanted, how does the cover do? Do I send you a picture? How does that work?
Yeah, so we'd have like a first initial conversation to talk about what you would envision. If there were different kind of records that you really like the style of, we could use that as a kind of creative jumping off point. Like Bryan said, we could do artistic things. If you have someone who really loves to paint or draw or something, we could put that image on it as well. But absolutely, we can take a picture, put that on, give it a title, have the name on it. We could do a series of photos. As you can see, like on the examples on the website, there's a lot of different methods that we can do. It's whatever you want, you know. We can do graphic designing to make it look.
And if there's like a family seal or some symbol that is connected to who you are, we can do that. We could put that on like the center sticker on the vinyl itself. And then we also can change the color of the vinyl too, so it doesn't have to be the solid black vinyl. It could be clear vinyl. We could do different colors. So you can get a lot of fun with it too.
So that's amazing. It really is tailor-made.
Yes, exactly.
It's not a seal for my mom. It's a song actually.
Okay.
And she sings it, and it's like 2 songs together. So I mean, it's just happy birthday, and then the Stevie Wonder, I just called to say I love you. But we are very, very picky about who hears that. We look at her real funny when she sing it to other people. We're like, I'm sorry, who are you? Like, what are you doing, lady?
That's only for us.
We like, no. And then and no one, everybody is like, have you heard from Nama yet? No. Oh, okay. Well, they just sit and they wait for her to sing that. So that's more so of a way that, like, I'm really, you and I, we're going to talk because I'm really thinking about this. Lucretia Sims asks, what does the price of these different options look like when you're doing it?
Yeah. So it definitely, there's a lot of flexibility. Like we just started working with a client who wants like the 5-minute length, but on a 12-inch vinyl. So they're like, because it takes us a long time to edit. It can, I think our average is like 6 hours of editing for every 15 minutes that you receive. Because we really dive in deep. So I would say probably the highest end is of like just a 30 minute album is like close to $2,000. But down at the lower end is more around like, I think $800 is where we start. But we try to personalize it. We try to meet people where they are, and like,
we can work with different budgets, and we again want to make this something that you are really happy with, and that you can afford. So we are flexible to work with people.
Definitely, we want people to have this, and so if it's like that is impossible, we're like, okay, how can we make this happen? And maybe it means we like write out what you're going to say, so there's less editing, you know. So there's ways that we can get around that.
In essence, what's being created is an heirloom, something that hopefully would stay in the family forever.
That's what we try to do. And in addition to getting the physical awesome record, you also get it digitally. So if something were to happen to that digital record, we still have the digital file. It could be repressed too. But
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to talk.
Okay. All right.
Excited.
All right. That sounds good.
So if you'd like to spend a little time talking about the podcast, how that came to be, kind of I know what you guys kind of cover in terms of the podcast, but just kind of walking the audience through what it's called, how they can find it, the kind of topics or the concept behind it.
So we started it right around the time we started the business. And it's kind of our portfolio, but also just our artistic place to play. That's how we see it.
It's where we work on our craft, but also get a sense of where people are at and being able to tell different stories. And so we're always interested in different stories. So to your audience, if you have an interesting story, or you're connected to a historical society or a genealogical society, and you're like wanting to tell a really interesting story, reach out to us, because we do want to
turn it into an episode.
Stories.
But our main focus is stories that connect people with place, people connecting to each other and to where they are. So one of our earliest episodes, Sounds of Seattle, was right after we had moved up here, because we lived in California. and we just recorded interesting sounds around the city. And it's like a 6-minute episode,
Yeah.
but you just kind of sink into, even when I go back and listen to it, you sink into this like immersion of being in a place. And that's one thing we love about podcasts is just having audio, because when you're watching someone, you get the body language and you get facial expressions, and that is a big benefit to kind of understanding what the person's saying. But at the same time, since you're seeing it on video, you know that you're not in the same room. You know that you are watching something happen somewhere else. We feel that when you're just listening, you could almost believe that it's happening right next to you, and it sort of hits you emotionally in a different way. And so that's why we don't do video. We're often asked, do you film stuff? We're like, no, we think there's a purity to just listening, and we like to focus on that. And so one of our former students, who's so sweet and has become a big fan of our podcast, she said it feels like riding on a train. That was her description of this episode.
Yeah.
We like to lead you in and then take you on a narrative journey.
Yes.
And then end with like a conclusion.
Yeah.
That's what
and one of my good friends says that she makes a bubble bath for herself and just kind of, sinks into the tub and then listens to our podcast. And I was like, that's the ultimate compliment, because I'm like, okay, especially coming from her, because she's a very active, busy person. And so to feel like, all right, wow, what we do, brings you into a centered space where you're mindful and just wanting to focus on this one thing. That's a huge compliment.
Yeah. And our first season, we played a lot. We did a lot of different things. Yeah. We were just kind of wanting to explore Seattle and really focusing on Seattle. Our second season was a look at the past and future of education and work. And so that was very structured, very researched. And then our most recent season, which we are wrapping up the final episode right now, was focusing on like hobbies and passions and the connection and history that we have with these tasks that are kind of like, from our economic perspective, not very important, but we were trying to argue that they have a lot of value. Yeah. So it's always something about hopefully taking a look at things from a different perspective. That's what our audience gets out of it.
Yeah. Some of the favorite moments that I've had throughout the podcast, and we can dive into some of them more if you want to, but the first season, Kelly does an interview with her parents on their sailing boat.
Yes.
And in this episode, we're just kind of sitting there and we just have a conversation asking her parents about, what does sailing mean to them? And it's almost like a personal essay, because Kelly really kind of reflects on her own experience growing up on a boat, and also the sort of dueling dilemma of like being on this boat and seeing, a huge cruise ship go by on the Puget Sound and
just like belching, black smoke,
thinking about the environmental impacts of us as humans, traveling around the world.
Well, because the day that we recorded that, it was terribly smoky. There were a bunch of forest fires,
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's kind of like it's our personal history of what like boating means to my family, and like my mom's history, what it meant to her family, and then how that transferred over into our family, but then also these other kind of complex emotions at the same time.
And then
my favorite is BrickCon.
Oh,
it's one that it's about Lego. And so people think that it's not very serious, but it's one of the sweetest episodes. I love that one. That was one of
It was a lot of fun to go to, because we're not part of the Lego community at all. We just thought, this would be a fun event to go to and see if we could get stories from people. And it ended up being this really remarkable experience of like, talking about community. People who are involved in the Lego community are really committed, and there's really this tight-knit DIY sharing, collaborative energy from everybody there. And so it was infectious to just kind of be in that space and hear from these different people, from, people who were, older with several kids of their own to, even young children, people who don't even have children, who are still adults, who still want to work in Lego. And you can just tell that they really feel like it it transcends just the individual blocks. It's really just
Yeah.
a memorable
So
thing.
I wanna say this. Kelly is one that, Bryan, that does not believe. She's scientific.
Yes.
And so because she's scientific, there are certain things that you and I believe as far as genealogy is concerned, and what happens, when think like our ancestors talking to us or guiding us or things of that nature. So that's not necessarily something that Kelly believes in. However, and I'm asking you this, Bryan, do you see them pulling them in a direction of making them look at communities and what they do and how they work? Do you see that
Mm.
in the stories that they're telling?
What I see, well, I guess what I've always believed is ancestors see our strengths and our talents, and even our weaknesses, but they kind of, I was going to say nudge us, but maybe, I think in our case, in Donya's case, in my case, pushed us
Over a
to
cliff, but yeah.
over a cliff to kind of develop our own niche and our own kind of our own space within the genealogical world. So I would probably say whether you realized it or not, especially during COVID and our minds where they were, the ancestors planting that seed.
Mm.
And that's what they were doing, Kelly. I know you don't believe in it, but you literally have been pushed into a way of constantly pulling stories together about what's going on, where their communities are, how they're working, and eventually going back in some of them. Some of them learn something old, which is considered an ancestor, something that they did, something that they were going through, something that you're there, you just don't know it.
Mm.
And the thing is, I think I say it like that is because, like I told you guys before, I've never, it wasn't my thing to go into horror or death or anything like that. So instead of me jumping straight into genealogy, I just looked at the living folks in my family and just found them first. And then I went into that was the introduction for me, because when they tried the other way, scaring me with my aunt's handprint on the ceiling and things, yeah, I'm not the person at the go bump in the night. So I think you're definitely being introduced in a way that you haven't even recognized yet.
Mm.
And I just remembered a question I really wanted to to ask and forgot.
So this is the last one because we're running out of time.
Oh, okay.
This may have to be off camera, or if you wanted to post a comment, that would be great after the episode. Because of the community work, and you're in Seattle, you're in Washington, very diverse state, meeting and dealing with people who come from very different backgrounds than yours. I think that's the beauty of this. And how did that make you see yourselves differently, or if not, did you learn anything new about yourself dealing with all of these different community stories?
Mm.
Yeah, that makes me think of one episode that we did that has, changed my life.
Yeah.
Is it was called "A Song to Start a Revolution," and we did that episode about Masajina Amini, the young Kurdish woman in Iran who was killed by the morality police for not covering her hair properly, just a few years ago. And we had actually been on our way to BrickCon to go record at this Lego conference and stumbled upon a huge activation of Iranians in downtown Seattle protesting the Iranian regime. And we had our audio equipment, so we started recording it. And then ran into a wonderful woman named Nasim, and she handed us a pamphlet. We gave her a business card, and then now we're friends. And we ended up doing that episode, interviewing her and three other Iranian immigrants, three other women from Iran, about their personal stories. It's the most incredible episode. It still gives me shivers and brings tears to my eyes every time I listen to it. But now I am working with Nasim in an organization she started called I Will, and it's advocating for human rights around the world, especially in Iran, and helping refugees from Iran settle in the United States and Canada. And so, that's one really specific example that Iran had always felt like this country that, like, I guess the United States doesn't get along with, but it was really two-dimensional in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then after hearing their stories and hearing about the beauty of this country and the beauty of the culture, I was very deeply changed. And now I feel like the world has become richer. It's become bigger and more complex. And that's one thing that's amazing about sharing stories.
Yeah. And yeah, that was the moment I think we both realized that, like, these are stories that often aren't shared in our common everyday media. And so we're giving a voice to these stories to be able to reach an audience. And even though we're American citizens and we're not Iranian, we have an obligation to help tell these stories and share these different perspectives. And it is valuable, especially as news networks and other things are, especially on a local level, starting to go away. We need more people to help tell these particular stories.
Yeah.
And that is a great note to end the show on.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much. This has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't hang up. Bryan, we're gonna talk to you guys later because we are running out.
We'll see you next week, 4 p.m.
Thanks. I'm Donya.
Bryan, see you next week.
All right.